Be blessed by the divine. In 2011, the Finnish tourist board ran a campaign that used silence as a marketing product. Are you surprised? Obviously, they sought to entice people to visit Finland and experience the beauty of this silent land. They released a series of photographs of single figures in the nature and used the slogan, "Silence, please." I believe Finland may be onto something very big. As the world around us becomes increasingly loud and cluttered, we may find ourselves seeking out the reprieve that silent places and silence have to offer. Studies are beginning to show that silence is much more important to our brains than what we might think. Silence regenerates brain cells. A 2013 study on mice published in the journal Brain Structure and Function used different types of noise and silence and monitored the effect the sound and silence had on the brains of the mice. The silence was intended to be the control in the study, but what they found was surprising. The scientists discovered that when the mice were exposed to 2 hours of silence per day, they developed new cells in the hippocampus. The hippocampus in the brain is a small region associated with memory, emotion, and learning. The growth of the new cells in the brain does not necessarily translate to tangible health benefits. However, in this instance, scientists has found that the cells appear to become functioning neurons. They claimed, "We saw that silence is really helping the new generated cells to differentiate into neurons and integrate into the system." In this sense, silence can quite literally grow our brain. The brain is actively internalizing and evaluating information during silence. A 2001 study defined a default mode of brain function that showed that even when the brain was resting, it was perpetually active, internalizing and evaluating information. Further study in 2013 was published in The Frontiers in Human Neuroscience. Joseph Moran wrote that the brain's default mode network is observed most closely during the psychological task of reflecting on one's personalities and characteristics, what we call as self-reflection, or what our Guru Yogiraj Sri Vethathiri Maharishi called as introspection or inner travel. Rather than during self-cognition, thinking of the self-concept or thinking about self-esteem, for example, self-reflection is a lot more powerful tool. When the brain rests, it is able to integrate internal and external information into a conscious workspace. When we are not distracted by noise or goal-oriented tasks, there appears to be a quiet time that allows our conscious workspace to process things. During these periods of silence, our brain has the freedom it needs to discover its place in our internal and external world. The default mode of the brain helps us think about profound things in an imaginative way. All profound things and emotions of things are preceded and attended by silence. Silence relieves stress and tension. Silence calms our soul. It has been found in research that noise can have a pronounced physical effect on our brains, resulting in elevated levels of stress hormones. The sound waves reach the brain as electrical signals via the ear. The body reacts to these signals even if it is sleeping. It is thought that the amygdala, which is located in the temporal lobes of our brain, is associated with memory formation, and emotion is activated and this causes a release of stress hormones. If we live in a constantly noisy environment around us and within us, that we are likely to experience chronically elevated levels of stress hormones. Now do you see why we are constantly stressed? A 2002 study that was published in Psychological Science further examined the effects that the relocation of Munich's German's airport had on children's health and cognition. Gary Evans, a professor of human ecology at Cornell University, notes that children who are exposed to noise develop a stress response that causes them to ignore the noise. What is of interest is that these children not only ignored harmful stimuli, they also ignored stimuli that they should be paying attention to, such as teachers' lessons, parents' instructions, grandma's story. They were ignoring all of these as well. This study is among the strongest, probably the most definitive proof that noise, even at levels that do not produce any hearing damage, causes stress and is harmful to humans. Silence seems to have the opposite effect of the brain to noise. While noise may cause stress and tension, silence releases the tension in the brain and body. A study published in the journal Heart discovered that 2 minutes of silence can prove to be even more relaxing than listening to relaxing music. They based these findings of changes they noticed in blood pressure and blood circulation in the brain. Do you know silence replenishes our cognitive resources? Silence isn't empty, it's full of answers. The effect that noise pollution can have on cognitive task performance has been extensively studied, my friends. It has been found that noise harms task performance at work and at school. It can also be the cause of decreased motivation and an increase in error making. The cognitive functions most strongly affected by noise are reading attention, memory, and problem solving. Studies have also concluded that children exposed to households or classrooms near airplane flight paths, railways, or highways have lower reading scores and are slower in their development of cognitive and language skills. But it's not all bad news. It is possible for the brain to restore its finite cognitive resources. According to the attention restoration theory, when we are in an environment with lower levels of sensory input, the brain can recover some of its cognitive abilities. In silence, the brain is able to let down its sensory guard and restore some of what has been lost through excess noise. We are talking about silence that leads us towards the eternal bliss. The quieter we become, the more we are able to hear. The more we are able to hear our own internal mind, subconscious mind, reveal to us the secrets of who we are and the secrets of nature. Listen to silence. It has so much to say. All men's miseries derive from not being able to sit in a quiet room alone. Do you know that? Saying nothing sometimes says the most. Have you not felt it? Pythagoras once said, "A fool is known by his speech, and a wise man by silence." Mahatma Gandhi once said, "It is better in prayer to have a heart without words than words without a heart." Albert Einstein believed that the monotony and solitude of a quiet life stimulates the creative mind. Silence is the sleep that nourishes wisdom. Noise creates illusions. Silence brings truth. Just think about it. If there were a little more silence, if we all kept quiet, maybe we could understand something very profound. In the silence behind what can be heard lies the answers we have been searching for so long. Speech is silver. Silence is golden. The sound of a baby crying is one of the most disturbing sounds there is to the human brain. The military has used the sounds of crying babies to torture people. The noise calls to the lowest parts of our minds and tells us that something is wrong. When people hear a crying child, their first response is to try to make the noise stop. Bottles, pacifiers, rocking, anything to alleviate the sound that seems to drill a hole through our head. The cries of a baby are an awful sound. Crying is the sound of life. The child is trying to tell us, I believe that someone will meet my need, someone will come, someone loves me. It is indeed a beautiful sound, but yet we crave for silence. We don't like the cry of the child. The quiet and the wise lead quiet lives. Silence is a great source of strength. Inner silence is the mother of all talents. The closer we are to the truth, the more silent we become inside. I quote Albert Einstein once again. I think 99 times and find nothing. I stop thinking, swim in silence, and the truth comes to me. The great musician Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart once said, all I insist on, and nothing else, is that you should show the whole world that you are not afraid. Be silent if you choose, but when it is necessary, speak, and speak in such a way that people will remember it. There are many reasons for us to start making time for silence, rest, and solitude. Let's look at some of them. Too often, we work so hard, our focus is on productivity, that we lead ourselves to a point of burnout. Reason number 2, we are constantly reacting to external stimuli and to our internal noise. This increases sensitivity. Number 3, our brain is constantly imagining troubles. We have expectations leading to frustration, disappointment, and anxiety is rooted in being disconnected with our own inner silence. Number 4, we forget things. When our hippocampus region in the brain is not receiving adequate biomagnetic energy, we forget things. Number 5, mind is unable to cultivate a form of mindful intention in every action of ours. Therefore, in our forgetful state, we hurt ourselves and we hurt others. Number 6, over-disciplining, over-anxiousness leads to our actions being governed by emotions, decreases our self-awareness. We forget that we need to exercise our brain in order to grow it. The brain is perhaps the most complex and powerful organ, like muscles. It requires rest. When we have some free time, we must give it some adequate rest. We shouldn't be fiddling around with social media and we shouldn't be playing games. We are constantly exposed to uncomfortable situations. Silence alone will allow us to break out of our reactive nature, reactionary nature. Last but not the least reason to remain in silence is we need emotional cleansing. Ego, illusions, and imprints of sin needs to be cleansed from our genetic center. The only sure way to do that is to remain in silence and introspect. I have begun to realize that I can listen to silence and learn from it. It has a quality and a dimension all its own. However, time and silence appear to be two of the most luxurious things today. But the more we understand silence, that's where balance comes. Everything has its wonders, even darkness and silence, and you learn whatever state you are in, therein to be content. When you practice silence introspection on a regular basis, you will hear your silence so loud that you will begin to realize that there is something terribly wrong with a culture inebriated by noise and gregariousness. The things we understand create silence. The things that we do not create emotions. Dalai Lama once said, "Silence is sometimes the best answer." Within us is the soul of the whole, the wise silence, the universal beauty, the eternal one. What a beautiful saying by Ralph Waldo Emerson. Don't imagine that silence means you're going to be in seclusion. We have long stigmatized solitude. It has been considered an inconvenience, something to avoid, a punishment, a realm of loners. Science has often aligned it with negative outcomes. Freud, who linked solitude with anxiety, noted that in children the first phobias relating to situations are those of darkness and solitude. John Cacioppo, a modern social neuroscientist who has extensively studied loneliness, what he calls chronic perceived isolation, contends that beyond damaging our thinking powers, isolation can even harm our physical health. But increasingly, scientists are approaching solitude as something that, when pursued by choice, can prove therapeutic. When people are experiencing crisis, it's not always just about you. It's about how you are in the society. When people take moments to explore their solitude, not only will they be forced to confront who they are, they just might learn a little bit about how to outmaneuver some of the anxiety that surrounds them in a social setting. We cannot see things in perspective until we cease to hug them to our bosom. So therefore, silence introspection, moving away from existentializing moments, mental flickers of clarity can come to us. This can only occur during inward focused solitude. When we have those moments of clarity, we must learn not to fight it, but to accept it for what it is. Let it emerge calmly and truthfully, and we must learn not to resist it. Only then we will be able to dig deep into our mind and discover why we have stored up, pent up emotions and hurts, feelings that we must let go. That's possible only through silence introspection. Our alone time should not be something that we are afraid of. It is a deeper internal process, a chance for us to explore our internal world. It will, I promise you, turn out into a pleasant experience. The value of solitude depends on us finding an interior solitude. Solitude is self-strengthening. Solitude can be effective if it is voluntary. If we can sit down, examine our emotions effectively, and discriminate between what will cause hurt for us and others and what will not cause hurt for us and others, and choose to develop positive thinking in place of negative emotional actions. Solitude can be restorative. It can really lift us out of problems. It really has a powerful function for making us understand our predicament in this universe. It reveals the secrets of nature that no other meditative tool can ever give us. Remaining in silence starts with tying our tongue, to put a restraint order on our tongue. It's a ritual. It is the first virtue to restrain the tongue. Our heart has hidden treasures, in secret, kept in silence, sealed, the thoughts, the hopes, the dreams, the pleasure, whose charms were broken if revealed. Silence speaks when words cannot. In silence, there is eloquence. Stop weaving and see how the pattern improves. All your teachers may die one day, but your silence will never die. There is no teacher bigger and better than your own inner silence. Silence is a true friend who never betrays. Leonardo da Vinci once said, "Nothing strengthens authority so much as silence." Pablo Picasso believed that without great solitude, no serious work is possible. Mahatma Gandhiji once said, "Speak only if it improves upon the silence." To give our brain a break, we actually end up stimulating it. Noise disturbs our brain, and we foolishly imagine in the sound of the game, in the sound of social media, in the noise of the world around us, we actually relax. No, we don't. When we make a conscious choice to put our phone down and decide how we will use the silence, we will be able to discover what a beautiful world that awaits us within us. I'm not suggesting that it's going to be easy for you to find time to enjoy the quietude. We need to make it a priority for us. Our brain requires silence. Our brain requires reflection time. Our brain requires solitude. Our brain requires meditation. Our brain requires reflection and introspection. During these silent moments, we must not worry and ruminate, but eradicate worries. Get rid of fears from our hearts. We know the world would be a kinder place if we all slowed down and sat each day, and everyone on this planet could benefit from meditation and introspection. Silence helps us to live consciously. Psychologists and philosophers alike have said silence can wake us up and provide meaningful answers in our lives. Silence can give us a gentle nudge to let us know if something doesn't feel right by putting us in touch with our body and our emotions. The psychological benefit of experiencing silence, even when it makes us uncomfortable, can mean more purposeful living. Silence can increase self-awareness, self-compassion, and improve decision-making skills with improved mental clarity. We must use silence to become more mindful and self-compassionate. Being conscious is the first step in emotional healing. It's being able to turn toward and acknowledge our difficult thoughts and feelings such as inadequacy, sadness, anger, or confusion. With a spirit of openness and curiosity, self-compassion involves responding to those difficult thoughts and feelings with kindness, sympathy, and understanding so that we soothe and comfort ourselves when we are hurting. Research has shown that self-compassion greatly enhances emotional well-being. It boosts happiness, reduces anxiety and depression, and even can help maintain healthy lifestyle habits such as diet and exercise. Being both mindful and compassionate leads to greater ease and well-being in our daily lives. Silence can enhance conversations. By choosing silence, we will naturally listen more, and others have the opportunity to share more, enhancing our relationships. Silence is a tool for increased emotional regulation. Silence can be the space between a feeling and a response. Take a silent pause and choose your response calmly and wisely. It requires practice. Silence gets better with practice. If silence is something we rarely get or even fear it a little, lean towards activities that can help us practice. Join Sky Yoga system. Join the silence retreat in Arya Temple of Consciousness. Join the silence retreat in the local Sky Yoga Center. Or sit quietly in your own home. Remain in silence. Feel the stillness as the other end of your conscious mind. Before you go to bed, sit in silence. Remain calm. Listen to your thoughts flow. Introspect. Choose positive thinking. Reflect on the day. Note down what has gone right for you throughout the day, what has gone wrong for you throughout the day. Take a break. Silence is indeed a great source of strength. Mozart once beautifully said, "The music is not in the notes, but in the silence between." Charles de Gaulle said, "Silence is the ultimate weapon of power." If you face God in prayer and silence, God will speak to you. Then you will know that you are nothing. It is only when you realize your nothingness, your emptiness, that God can fill you with Himself. Souls of prayer are souls of great silence. Mother Teresa. Thank you for the wonderful opportunity to share my thoughts on silence. Be blessed by the divine.